Welcome, everyone, to another fun filled day on the Bob Wire podcast. They love young men. They love them. Love them, love them, love them, love them. We didn't elect him to be a stand up fucking comedian. We elected him to take care of the business of the American citizens and to protect the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, black, 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 black on black, black, my thoughts so black, 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 I'm black, my skin is so black, I'm rocking that black on black is black.
Okay, what's going on with the mayor of New York? So the corruption case against, and I'm reading this from the CBS News, so that's my source. I always like to be straightforward with you guys, letting you know where I get my sources from, so I'm not just pulling it out of someone's ass, right? So boom, the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams will continue for now. A judge on Friday appointed outside attorney Paul Clement to argue before the court over the U.S. Department of Justice request to drop the federal charges. So Mayor Adams obviously had decided that he was going to work alongside of Trump. He was going to bow down and kiss the cock ring so that he would be able to get out of the federal charges that he was facing with the Department of Justice. And by doing so, he was going to be extremely compliant with the deportations that's been going on. But Trump was shrewd enough to say that I'm still going to hold it over his head where at any given time that I can put it back, the injunction back in so that the Department of Justice could go after him again. I mean, guys, I don't think it's any secret that Eric Adams is probably one of the most, at least of my lifetime, one of the most corrupt New York City mayors ever. And I believe elections is going to be coming up in November 25th for the mayoral candidacy. I think they even said that Cuomo is going to be throwing his hat back into the ring. The former governor. He may possibly run for mayor. I hope you guys stay away from him. We had enough old sexual offenders already in office. So New York, you cannot afford to go back to the era of Eric Adams. It's just been extremely embarrassing what's been going on. And I'm not one of those people say, so, obviously this one Democrat was acting like a nitwit and being corrupt, so let's go to a Republican, right? Obviously not. If you want to shit the bed harder, then put a Republican in, We're already shitting the bed. So up next on the agenda, GOP lawmakers confronted by constituents angry with Trump must cuts. Representative Rich McCormick, a Georgia Republican, clashed with constituents throughout a packed town hall in Roswell on Thursday. One attendant pressed McCormick on why the administration was taking such a radical and extremist and sloppy approach to the layoffs, noting that the administration has tried to rehire some employees working on bird flu and the nation's nuclear weapons program after they were fired. Another who said she was a descendant of Patrick Henry's sister said tyranny is rising in the White House, and Mr. Trump has declared himself king. She pressed McCormick on what he would do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House. To pull that in check, there's a part of me that's like, hey, baby, it's FAFO, right? That's what's happening here, and I love to see it because those very people that was in that town hall meeting are the ones that are responsible for the orange buffoon sitting in office currently, right? So this happened because of, the results of what you did, right? Elections have consequences, right? And when you sit there and you think that this guy was just going to hurt people who didn't look like you, because if you guys take a look and you go online or you just check the local news, you will see that most of those people in there were definitely not people that looked at my shade, right? They caused that on themselves, but I also tip my hat to them too, because they're showing you how you fight, right? And this is something that I want for my fellow people to the left to look at. When we sit there and say, okay, we don't have the House, we don't have the Senate, and we obviously don't have the executive branch, right? And then we start feeling, woe is me. No, we got to get out here, get ahead of this. Press your congressperson. Press your all your political leaders as much as you can. Make calls, filibuster them with constant calls and complaining. And even if they're Democrats, even though you would say, okay, well, they're Democrats, they weren't siding with Trump to begin with, but no, press those weak-kneed Democrats too to come out and talk about this. So we got to do this bipartisanly. You know what I'm saying? Just collectively as citizens. Let's not divide ourselves up left or right now, because you know what, fascism is facing us, and we have to fight back and push back against this. What's going on? It's a very scary, damning time that's going on in this country, and I hope that we wake up, and it looks like some of the people on the right are. So I'd like to move along. Next article that I want to go over, this source so happens not to be CBS, it's Associated Press, who, by the way, Trump's team had said they're not allowed at any of the press conference, which is dangerous, once again, when you stop allowing the press to be able to cover what our elected officials is doing. That's a march towards fascism. To start that off, a month into President Donald Trump's second term, lawyers for the Republican administration seem intent on provoking a legal fight to overturn a 90-year-old Supreme Court decision known as Humphrey Executor that has been critical to the development of modern U.S. government. Humphrey Executor ushered in an era of powerful independent federal agencies charged with regulating labor relations, employment, discrimination, the airwaves, and much else. The unanimous 1935 Supreme Court ruling established that the president cannot fire the appointed leaders of the alphabet soup of federal agencies without cause. Guys, listen to what these Republican leaders are trying to say. These right-leaning lawyers are trying to push for it. They want, just because something is falling under a federal branch, they don't want to allow checks and balances to exist, right? They want the president to literally be able to come and just fire anybody from any agency just because he may not think they're loyalists. When you give a president that much power and there's no one there to rein it in, there's no checks and balances, then we don't have a balanced government. If we don't have a balanced government, then that leads into totalitarianism, authoritarianism. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be careful about what's going on here. When the president is doing a power grab, and when he feels like he could have the power to fire just judges too, federal judges, just because he doesn't like their rulings, that's where it is. There's extreme danger in these type of situations. We got to be very aware of this. Now, here it is. He wants to overturn a 90-year-old Supreme Court ruling, very much like how they wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade, right? You know what I'm saying? And they were able to. So us here on the left, or maybe not even on the left, maybe moderates, maybe even some of our brothers on the right that might sit up there and have some respect for the Constitution and for, case rulings, we got to stop and say, why is this president coming along and literally trying to obliterate all these old case rulings? It's dangerous, and I don't care what side of the fence you're on, At the end of the day, yeah, typically I feel most people that are on the right are assholes, and they lack empathy, they don't care about nobody but themselves, and until something smacks them in their face, they can't see it. But once they get smacked in their face, and if they want to come along to our side, I feel that we have to allow them to come on our side, ultimately. And I want to always be crystal clear when I'm saying dangerous. I'm meaning that literally we're at a time where we can literally lose this country. Like, democracy is not promised to this country, right? Democracy, as they would say, it's littered with the bloods of patriots. I feel like Coretta Scott King said, every generation's got to fight for their civil liberties. So the fight is always continuous, right? And the danger is falling asleep at the wheel. Because when you fall asleep at the wheel, then a car could veer off the road, right? And that's what I'm talking about. We're literally veering off the road right now. We are normalizing shit that should not be normalized. We literally fought to not be under a monarchy rule. So who are we to allow this orange turd to sit in the seat and say that he is the king? We have people who are, I guess you would say, apologists for the president, and they would say, oh, well, he doesn't mean it literally, you know what I'm saying? He's just joking, or he's just trolling. Listen, there is nothing to joke about with something like that, okay? We didn't elect him to be a stand-up fucking comedian. We elected him to take care of the business of the American citizens and to to protect the U.S. Constitution. Every president's got to say that they're willing to fight and defend the Constitution. And this guy's literally trying to eviscerate the Constitution. We got to also look at the fact historically, right? When the Third Reich movement was happening in Germany during the Second World War, they were literally able to eviscerate German rule all within like maybe a month. They were able to change everything and turn it basically into a dictatorship, which ultimately we know what happened with that, right? So we say our Constitution has stood for well over 200 something years, right? Oh, it can't be moved, it can't be budged. That's bullshit. Never think that way. There's a real danger happening, right? Where this is not a fire drill, you could actually feel the heat now, and you already smell the smoke. So that's what I'm speaking when I'm talking about the dangers. Up next, still we're on the same tune of the Supreme Court, because apparently right now the judges are the ones that are holding democracy down, right? And it scares me when the Supreme Court's got to get involved, because we know the Supreme Court is right-leaning right now. But we do have a lot of federal judges. Some of them were Republican picked, that are holding up the last line of defense. So I applaud them for not bowing the knee to President Trump and literally saying that America matters more than this moron, right? So I'm grateful that they're like the last guardrails of democracy, right? As we keep riding, listen, we're on the road, and there's a sign saying fascism dead ahead, and in the rear view it's saying democracy, right? We're passing that. So we got to keep that in mind. We got to be very serious about what the fuck's going on here. So Washington, a unanimous Supreme Court on Friday dealt a severe blow to Holocaust survivors and their families in a long-running lawsuit seeking compensation from Hungary for property confiscated during World War II. The justice threw out the appeal court ruling that has allowed the lawsuit to continue despite a federal law that generally shields sovereign nations like Hungary from suits in the United States courts. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing for the courts, said that a coming theory without more doesn't satisfy the law requirement. The court sent the case back to the U.S. Courts of Appeal for the District of Columbia Circuit, but it's unclear how much is left of the lawsuit. You know, what this case is coming down to, they have to literally show these Holocaust survivors, where they're pressing the lawsuit against Hungary, that it has some sort of legitimate tie to the United States. Otherwise, they can't hold any other, like our Supreme Court, for instance, can't hold any other nation, accountable for anything. The only way we could do that is if there was some sort of tie within the United States, like they were somehow using things that they stole during the time of war or oppressing the Jews and were able to benefit financially. I want to kind of make mention of that because, you know what, I got to give it up to the Jews. They won't let the shit go, right? Neither should they. They keep pressing and keep pushing, right? I think that that's something that us as black folks need to really have to take a page out of. You know what I'm saying? They literally whipped your ass from 1619 to 1865 and then told you it was okay. And you still sit there idly by. And we have some coons like goddamn Candace Owens, Byron Donalds, Tim Scott, and the host of other coons sitting up there telling you that we don't need reparations. So that's why I want to make sure I brought this article into play, because it shows that the Jews are still not playing. They're still fighting for what they deserve, and I hope they get the compensation that they need. And I know a lot of times we may have some black folks, not all, but some in our community that sit there and say things about all those effing Jews and blah, blah, blah. I never like to get caught up in that rhetoric. Any group of people that have been oppressed or been hurt through white supremacy, I support all the time, all the way. And we should, as people of color, we all should support that. So don't get caught up in those Jews and this and that. No. Anytime you, especially as a person of color, see injustices are going on at the hand of white supremacy, you should always be there to resist it and fight it. So I'm in full support of these people. So we're gonna talk about CPAC, right? So for those who may not know what CPAC is, it's an acronym for Conservative Political Action and Conference, right? CPAC. It's the meeting of all the right-leaning. It's like the right-leaning Super Bowl, right? It's literally the conference that takes place where all these conservatives get to come together and do a circle jerk, right? They all come out and they all want to talk about how great conservatism is, right? Giving each other high fives, pushing and promoting all the fucking bigotry they could find in every nook and cranny. It's the meeting where they can come and gather around and talk about how they should be able to control women's bodily autonomy. It's a meeting where they could all come around and talk about just how evil migrants are and all the crimes they're committing. It's the conference where they could all get around and they could say every job that's being held by a black person is DEI. The CPAC meeting also is the meeting where all these SAS can meet. There will be a lot of women that's going to go through a lot of things when all these ghouls come together at this particular meeting, right? CPAC also, whenever it shows up somewhere where it rears its ugly head, usually the Grindr app is on fire. Take a look at the volume of activity on Grindr.com when CPAC is in town. You see, one thing about the right, and I know some people may get a little mad at this, but they love to scream about alpha males, right? They're the alpha males, alpha. And we're on the left, we're beta males, right? But I'm telling you guys, the party that probably has the most queers is on the right. They love young men. They love them. Love them, love them, love them, love them. Right? But they hate homosexuality. It's the weirdest thing. It's a severe case of self-hate. So when you want to come out and be free, and be liberated, and be able to walk hand in hand with your gay lover, they say, no, that doesn't go down in my America. When you want to do stuff like that, you take a flight to Thailand, all right? And you play with the lady boys out there, and you come home, and you be a responsible Republican. Now, getting back to the CPAC meeting, right? Conference that took place. So, once again, they had the king of the spectrum showing up. That's Elon Musk. He came out with a fucking chainsaw, guys. And everybody started roaring and clapping and like this was the greatest thing ever. Listen, guys, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a progressive, but the right, you guys are a bunch of fucking goofies. Like, why would that excite you? A fucking guy on a spectrum which wearing shades coming out with a fucking chainsaw, I guess referencing how he's cutting through all the federal workers. And you think that that's fun. You think that that's something to be applauded. Listen, these are people literally losing their jobs, right? These are now people that are going to have to be relying on a system for unemployment and possibly social welfare, right? These people, these federal workers that you just want to just call federal workers, remember they have names. And these jobs that these people are doing are more important than you may think, right? Because you're just on the outside and you're just hearing federal workers and like, oh, federal workers, they don't do shit, blah, 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 blah. Until they're not there. And then you realize how much you need them, right? And when you fire all these federal workers and then all of a sudden have to turn around and rehire some of them, you're spending even more money because it costs money to hire people. They're not saving us any. They're not cutting any of the budget per se, right? They're just doing these things and trying to just sell it to your base. They want to sell it to people who fucking television does not leave Fox News, right? And they want to tell them all these wonderful lies about how much Doge is doing such a wonderful job. You literally got like mid 20 year olds running around firing people who's been doing their jobs longer than they've been alive, right? There's something inherently wrong. And then you had the king chief dumbass Elon Musk coming out with a fucking chainsaw. Also, during that, we had Steve Bannon, I believe that was his name, doing the fucking the Hitler the Nazi salute. And there were some chatter that was on Twitter where some people were like, "Oh man, come on, he's just trolling." And Once again, we're trying to normalize this, right? Because let's just say for shits and giggles that there's just trolling that's going on. What's funny about trolling with something that is so inherently racist, right? What's funny about that, really, at the end of the day? We got to really sympathize and empathize with the Jewish community when it comes to that. And I mean that as black folks too. Like, we shouldn't be okay in that. We shouldn't be greenlighting that. Because at the end of the day, Nazis killed more than Jews too. They killed black folks too. They killed queer people too, right? They were a hateful group. And when you got anyone playing, when that's going on in your face, once again, that's where the break glass happens and you pull the alarm. Like, it's literally happening right now. Fascism right now is literally happening in this country. These groups and bandits of cohorts are literally trying to run roughshod with government right now in a complete takeover. They want to make the United States of America the United Confederates of America. Thank you. That's what they really want to do. They want to swing back the hands of time right now. And that's what's dangerous. We have to go back and we have to listen to our elders, right? Because they were literally being prophetic and speaking into today from back then. If you have anyone in your circle that they don't know anything that's going on politically, I feel that we're in a time and stage where you should shame the fuck out of them. You should make a mockery out of them. You should say, what the fuck are you doing that you don't know that this is happening? We got to be like this now, where if all you could do is quote to me what's going on a fucking NBA game or who did something funny on TikTok, but you can't tell me not one executive order that Trump has just passed that could inherently hurt you or people that you love, you need to shame that person. You need to tell them to wake the fuck up. Anyone that sits up there and tries to both sides an issue and say, oh, well, both parties does this and blah, blah, blah. You need to say, no, we're not going to do both sidesism anymore. There's inherently one party that is the evil empire, and that is the Republican Party. You need to shame them. When you are sitting in your household and you may have, I don't care, an uncle, an aunt, maybe your mother, your father, maybe your mate, your wife or your husband, and they're saying crazy shit, right? Siding with what Trump is doing. Don't diminish from the moment because you don't want to argue with them. Engage with them and let them know that's bullshit. This is how we start to fight back. We started at home. And then we bring it to the fucking streets, right? And when this asshole's coming out with a chainsaw, we come out with our fucking shotties, with our chains, our bats. What's those fucking spike bats? What are they called? Mace? Mace ball? Come out swinging that shit. I'm serious. We got to meet them with that same level of energy. We got to let them know we're not going to back down and you're not going to scare us into our households. You're not going to push back the clock anymore. We're moving forward, even if we have to drag your ass forward, right? We're going to drag you across the finish line. Let them know that, listen, I don't care if you want to call yourself a Democrat or Republican or whatever the case may be. Right is right, wrong is wrong, right? So this is the point where we got to move to and move to action. We got to start demanding our elected officials hear us and let them know if you don't hear us and we don't see you on those front lines fighting, like Jasmine Crockett is, salute to that sister. If we don't see you doing things like that, you're out of here. You're not going to be reelected. So shame on you guys when moving forward. If when Marjorie Taylor Greene times come back up to run for office, if you reelect her, that tells me that you didn't learn a fucking thing. And Democrats, y'all need to be in front of the camera every minute, every day saying, today, 50th day into the Trump's presidency, he did this, he did that. You need to keep saying that. Push that down people's throats. On that note, guys, thank you for coming for another great episode of Bob Wire Podcast. I usually like to leave you guys with a proverb, right? I would say, wherever you see a tongue riding an ass, a Republican is not far behind. Peace, love you guys.
Black, 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 black on black, black, my thoughts so black, 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 I'm black, my skin is so black, I'm rocking that black on black is